In 1879, a woman in the quiet English village of Beaulieu began to feel something move inside her body. It wasn't a child. It wasn't a sickness. It was something alive, something that had no right to be there. For 7 months, her belly grew. Her appetite became monstrous. And when doctors finally cut her open, what they found changed the way an entire town looked at water, food, and the human body itself. This is the true clinical record of Agatha Alfred, a woman who unknowingly fed the creature living within her. Step into the shadows, where the line between medicine and madness disappears. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next story that should have stayed buried. Beaulieu village lay in its usual silence, the kind particular to rural Hampshire, a silence not of peace, but of long habit. It was midsummer and the air hung heavy inside the Alfred cottage, pressing the curtains against the walls. At 37, Agatha Alfred kept the same routine each night, closing the shutters, checking the lock on the door, folding her shawl over the chair, and setting the earthen pitch of well water beside the small iron-framed bed sheared with her husband, Alfred. The hour had long passed midnight when she awoke with a dryness in her throat. The lamp had gone out, and the room was dark enough that she could only trace the faint outline of the dresser and the shadowed form of her husband asleep. She reached for the picture by touch, the clay still cool from the evening air. The surface of the water gave a faint sound, not the soft lap of stillness, but a motion, almost imperceptible. She took no notice. Her thirst was greater than her caution. Raising the rim to her lips, she drank. The water slid down quickly, metallic and stale from sitting uncovered. Then a sharp small sting at the back of her throat. She coughed to once swallowed again and set the picture down with a muted clink. Her palm lingered on the clay, feeling its dampness. It was nothing unusual, she told herself. The wells of Beaulieu often carried grit. She had heard of neighbors spitting up tiny pebbles when the bucket rope frayed. She swallowed twice more to clear the sensation. It subsided, leaving only a thin line of heat under her ribs. Agatha lay back down, adjusting her cotton nightdress, and waited for sleep. The faint smell of damp earth rose from the picture, a smell she knew from years of fetching water at dawn. Through the window, the faint drumming of insects filled the night. She thought briefly of her daughter asleep in the next room, then of Alfred, whose breathing came in steady, untroubled waves beside her. Nothing, she told herself, could be wrong. A simple irritation, perhaps dust. The human body, as she had heard one doctor say at the parish meeting, was a machine of mysterious humors. In the morning, she felt a faint soreness in her throat and a mild burning along the right side of her chest. She said nothing of it. When Alfred asked why she was slow to rise, she smiled and said she had swallowed badly. He laughed, remarking that she was becoming delicate, like the London women he read about in the papers. The day passed uneventfully. She swept the yard, baked bread, and hung linens to dry. The ache behind her ribs pulsed once in the afternoon sun, but quickly vanished. There was work to be done, and the body, she believed, had its ways of correcting itself. That night, as she prepared for bed again, she refilled the same pitcher from the backyard well. The rope squealed against the wooden wheel. The water came up murky, but she strained it through muslin as she always did. She set it by the bedside once more, careful not to wake Alfred, who had already drifted into sleep. Before extinguishing the lamp, she looked briefly at the picture. The clay rim darkened by moisture, the faint shimmer of water catching the last glint of light. The room fell silent again. Then came the sound, a soft, deliberate slosh, though no one had touched it. Agatha paused, her hand still over the lamp's wick, listening. The sound came once more. Faint, wet, and quick, and then nothing. She waited a moment longer, said a quiet prayer out of habit, and lay down. The picture sat still in the dark, but for a long while, long after she closed her eyes, the faint smell of damp earth lingered in the air. By the third week, after the incident with the picture, Agatha Alfred began to experience what she later described as a motion within. It was not sharp nor constant, merely a subtle stirring beneath the skin of her lower abdomen, as though a pulse had shifted from its proper place. The sensation was mild at first and came at irregular hours, most often after she had eaten. She dismissed it as indigestion, a common ailment among women of her age who managed housework and took their meals late. In Bolio village, medicine was an improvised practice, a blend of household remedies and superstition. For fatigue, one drank warm vinegar. For dizziness, vinegar with salt, and for abdominal fluttering, women were told to rest and think pleasant thoughts. The midwife, Mrs. Elkins, was called discreetly one morning when Agatha's discomfort became visible. After a brief examination, through the stays of her dress, the woman smiled faintly and whispered that it could be a late blessing. At 37, such occurrences were rare, but not unheard of. Agatha said little in response. She did not feel pregnant. She felt inhabited. Her appetite grew without reason. Meals that once sustained her barely quieted the hollow ache inside. She would sit longer at the table, her spoon lingering, her expression fixed on nothing. Alfred began to notice her habit of pressing her hand lightly against her stomach after each meal. "You worry too much about what's natural," he told her. A doctor would charge a week's wages to say the same thing. "You've taken too much bread and too little air." Yet at night, when the lamps were lowered and the cottage silent, she would feel the same deliberate movement, faint at first, then rhythmic, pressing upward beneath her ribs. She would place her palm flat across her abdomen, tracing the motion, as if to locate its source. It was not random. It came in but turns, particularly after she had eaten. Within the village, whispers began. Mrs. Elkins mentioned Agatha's condition to her sister, who mentioned it to the grocer's wife, who mentioned it to the parish clerk. Soon quiet smiles followed. Agatha through the market. A woman her age, long married, now showing signs of expectation. It was considered a matter of private amusement, but Agatha knew laughter carried unease. Beneath their politeness lay something closer to disbelief. Her digestion worsened. After certain meals, she experienced waves of nausea and a dull ache near her spine. Alfred suggested ginger tea, but she refused it. One evening, as she prepared to undress, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her abdomen seemed subtly distended, the skin beneath pale and drawn. She ran her fingers over it. The flesh was warm, tender, and beneath it a faint shift, as if something had turned in slow deliberation. Alfred's patience thinned as her complaints increased. He avoided conversation during meals, avoided her gaze at night. When she spoke of movement, he accused her of imagining things. "You've been reading too much from those pamphlets," he said. Once. Women fill their heads with nonsense and call it illness. The following week, she felt it again, stronger this time, a rolling pressure beneath the right side of her ribs. That night, without speaking, Alfred reached across the bed and placed his hand against her abdomen, perhaps to reassure her, perhaps to quiet her fears. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then, beneath his palm, something moved. Not a tremor or spasm, but a slow, purposeful contraction, like muscle, drawing inward around a living form. He pulled his hand away sharply. Neither spoke. The lamp flickered against the wall, and outside the wind rattled the wooden shutters. Agatha turned on her side, facing away, her eyes open. The movement came again, subtle, measured, and patient, as though the thing inside had begun to learn her rhythm. And beneath the thin skin of her ribs, a small shadow of motion became faintly visible. The first undeniable sign, the physician arrived from Elmington in the late afternoon, a cautious man named Dr. Edwin Gresham, who carried his practice in a black leather case, and his skepticism in equal measure. Word had reached him that a woman in Beaulieu village was experiencing fetal movement inconsistent with her term. He came less out of concern and more out of curiosity, for he had lately read of new continental experiments in acoustic diagnosis, a method by which sound could be used to observe motion within the human body. The Alfred cottage was small and dimly lit. Agatha sat upright in a wooden chair near the window, pale and composed, hands folded over the swelling at her waist. Her husband hovered in the doorway, visibly uneasy. Dr. Gresham introduced himself briskly and began unpacking a curious device, a narrow brass tube fitted with a diaphragm and a hollow earpiece. He explained after himself that the Doppler principle, named after the Austrian physicist who proposed it decades earlier, allowed detection of motion through frequency shifts in sound. If applied to the human body, it could, he claimed, differentiate the pulse of a child from the motion of the mother's blood. Agatha nodded faintly, uncomprehending, and lay back as instructed. The doctor pressed the cool end of the instrument to her abdomen. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock above the hearth. For a long while he listened. At first he heard only the familiar, the hollow rush of circulation, the steady murmur of respiration. But beneath it came another sound, one that did not conform to the expected cadence of a human body. It was neither pulse nor peristalsis, but a faint irregular friction, a movement with purpose, pausing and resuming, as if something soft were gliding through enclosed space. He adjusted the instrument and listened again. The sound changed position. It did not echo from one side to the other as an infant's motion might. It traveled horizontally and low, almost serpentine. Agatha spoke quietly. "Do you hear it?" Her voice was thin, almost apologetic. "Yes," the doctor replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "It may be gas entrapment. Intestinal motility, nothing more." He shifted the tube upward toward her ribs. The sound followed. He frowned. The movement seemed to react. Each time Agatha inhaled or murmured a word, there was a faint increase in activity beneath. The frequency rose slightly, then fell. Silent when she stopped speaking. He withdrew the device, rubbed the brass end with his handkerchief, and checked the clock. At 5:43 p.m., he resumed, this time recording notes in his ledger with deliberate precision. Pulse 78 bpm. Respiration calm, frequency irregular, not cardiac. Movement resembles crawling pattern. Possibly parasitic, unconfirmed. Subject responsive. Not fearful. When he pressed the instrument again, Agatha had begun humming softly, a nervous habit, the tune without form or melody. The doctor froze. Through the tube. He heard it, a distinct shift. Something inside her body moved closer to the surface, following the resonance of her voice as if drawn to the sound. He pulled the device away abruptly. The hum ceased. The motion stopped. The silence that followed was long and heavy. The doctor cleared his throat, closed the ledger, and returned the apparatus to its case. His expression had altered, not fearful, but disturbed by the inadequacy of his own explanations. Alfred stepped forward. "Well, what is it, doctor? Is it alive?" Dr. Gresham hesitated. He glanced once at Agatha, then at the floor. "The body does strange things under strain," he said finally. It may correct itself. He gathered his things without another word, and left, the sound of his boots fading down the road until there was nothing but the soft rustle of leaves outside. Agatha looked toward the doorway long. After he had gone, the late sunlight slanted across the table, touching the brass stethoscope he had forgotten to take. It glimmered faintly, catching the light, and from within her she felt a small, deliberate movement, timed perfectly with the fading echo of his departure. By October, the Alfred household had changed in rhythm and in appetite. Agatha's hunger had become a defining feature of her days. Mechanical, persistent, and wholly without satisfaction. She began her mornings with bread still warm from the hearth, consuming slice after slice until the loaf was gone. By noon, she required more. In the records that survive, Alfred noted his astonishment. She eats 14 loaves a day, 3 times over, and still claims hunger. The transformation occurred gradually, but with visible consequence. Agatha's frame expanded, not with softness, but with pressure, as if her body was stretching to accommodate some interior demand. Her corsets no longer fastened. The dresses she had worn last spring hung open at the seams, and yet, despite her growing size, her skin remained pale, almost translucent. Her eyes began to sink deeper into their sockets, shadowed by sleeplessness and strain. At first the village pied her. "She's carrying late," they said. "An older mother must eat for 2. But as the weeks went on, sympathy gave way to suspicion. Victorian modesty allowed illness to be spoken of, but not appetite. For a woman to eat beyond restraint was a moral failing, a lapse of self-control, unbecoming of a wife. The grocer's wife began to limit her purchases. The baker's boy whispered to others that Mrs. Alfred ate like a man gone starving. Alfred, exhausted and uncertain, tried reason. He hid portions, replaced bread with boiled potatoes, diluted milk with water. None of it mattered. Agatha would rise in the middle of the night to search for food, her steps light but deliberate, the house creaking as she moved through it. The following mornings he would find crumbs scattered across the table and the faint impression of her hand pressed into the dough she'd torn apart. Each meal brought both relief and dread. After she ate, the motion wit in her abdomen became stronger, not violent, but organized, as though whatever resided there had learned to expect nourishment. She began pressing her hands to her stomach after meals, whispering softly that it settles when fed. The villagers, overhearing through open windows, carried tales of her madness through the parish. One evening, Alfred sat across from her as she ate, watching silently. He noticed that she did not chew as one hungry, but as one performing a duty. Bite, swallow, breathe, repeat. The rhythm was mechanical, devoid of pleasure. Between swallows, her throat convulsed lightly, as if something within adjusted its position to receive what she consumed. He left the table before she finished, unable to watch further. By the first frost, Agatha's body had altered in ways the mirror no longer disguised. Her belly had grown taut and rounded, but the rest of her seemed to hollow out. The bones of her wrists showed sharply beneath the skin. Her face appeared drawn, her cheeks flat. She often complained of heat in her stomach, saying that food vanished too fast. On the evening of November 12th, after her third meal, Agatha experienced a sudden wave of nausea. Alfred found her leaning over the basin, pale and trembling. She tried to speak but instead retched violently. The expelled matter was ordinary at first, bread, bile, water, but as she wiped her mouth, something small and pale clung to her lower lip. She touched it with a trembling finger and drew it out. A fragment, thin and curved, almost translucent. Under lamplight, it shimmered faintly, a scale no larger than a thumbnail. edged with a faint golden tint. She said nothing. She wrapped it in a handkerchief, folded it twice, and placed it in the drawer beside her bed. That night she did not eat, but the movement inside her came all the same. Steady, patient, and disturbingly alive. By the first weeks of December, the transformation of Agatha Alfred's body had reached proportions that defied both domestic reason and medical explanation. Her abdomen, once soft and pliant, had become grotesquely distended. A dome of flesh stretched thin to transparency. The skin bore the discoloration of strain, deep violet bruises radiating from the center like spokes. When the lamp light struck it obliquely, one could see the faint shimmer of subdermal veins, swollen and irregular, as if her body were mapping an unfamiliar architecture within. Her physician, summoned again from Elmington, documented the changes in his ledger with studied restraint. Patient exhibits severe abdominal distension, inconsistent with gestation. Surface tense, dermal tissue warm to touch, mild. Pulsation, noted lateral right quadrant, peristaltic movement appears exaggerated and autonomous. He noted further that her internal organs seemed displaced. The stomach pushed upward toward the diaphragm, the intestines compressed against the spinal ridge. Yet in all other aspects, she remained alive, lucid, and disturbingly calm. Alfred, however, was no longer calm. He avoided her gaze at the table, avoided her bed at night. When he did look, he did so in fragments. The corner of her shoulder, her hands, the braid of her hair, never the center of her body. The sight of it, moving of its own accord, stripped him of the ability to speak without trembling. Midwives, once willing to visit, now refused entry. One confessed that the sight put her off sleep. Another said that she feared contagion, though none could name the illness. The villagers avoided the path by the Alfred cottage. Mothers warned their daughters not to linger at the gate. In Bolio, misfortune was thought to spread by sight before it ever spread by touch. Inside the cottage, the days passed with a terrible sameness. Agatha ate little now. The appetite that had once consumed her had turned to fatigue. Her body, it seemed, had reached its limit of accommodation. The skin stretched so tightly across her abdomen that she bled in fine red lines. Beneath the movements were visible, rhythmic, coordinated, purposeful. Alfred described them later to the doctor as like the roll of a tide beneath canvas. One afternoon during examination, the physician attempted palpation. He pressed lightly along the midline, his fingers sinking into the tension of the skin. Underneath something recoiled, not as a muscle does, but as a creature might when disturbed. The doctor withdrew instantly, his composure wavering for the first time. Movement is not reflexive, he wrote. Appears responsive to contact. Duration approximately 6 seconds, directional. Upward. He prescribed confinement, fearing rupture. Agatha was moved to the upper room and placed on strict rest. Alfred carried her meals upstairs, his hands shaking so visibly that she sometimes took the tray from him. She no longer asked for help dressing. When she spoke, it was about small things. The sound of the wind, the missing clock on the mantel, the taste of the well water she no longer drank. By February, the body had become a landscape of motion. The swelling rose and fell in slow waves, sometimes crossing from one side of her torso to the other, deforming her shape into unnatural symmetry. Alfred recorded it once in private. The skin rose as though a hand beneath pressed outward. Once I thought I saw the line of its head. On the evening of the 12th, Agatha suffered what was described as a fit. Her breathing shortened. The surface of her abdomen rippled violently, as if something within strained for release. Alfred held her shoulders as she gasped for air. Then, for a moment, the motion stopped. The skin tightened to stillness. And from beneath hard, brief, and undeniable, something pressed outward. The outline was distinct, a jawline, hinged and narrow, forcing against her skin with horrifying clarity before sinking back into the darkness within. When the movement ceased, Agatha wept soundlessly. Alfred, unable to look at her, crossed the room and faced the wall. Outside, the snow had begun to fall, muffling the world in a silence that felt for the first time protective. The patient arrived by carriage, wrapped in 2 wool blankets, and scarcely conscious from exhaustion. The journey from Ballure to Winchester, some 14 miles of uneven road, had worsened her condition. Her husband, Alfred, accompanied her only to the gate, and did not enter. According to the admitting nurse's notes, he appeared drained of expression, as if long unacquainted with sleep. Inside the hospital's surgical ward, 6 physicians gathered under gaslight. Dr. Silas Morton presiding, Dr. Lionel Crisp, physician in residence, Dr. Hartley Wren, obstetric specialist, and 3 junior observers from London, recently attached to the hospital for study. Their discussion was recorded in part by the secretary of the board, Dr. Morton. The patient presents abnormal abdominal enlargement inconsistent with gestation or cystic tumor. Prior local examination reports autonomous movement visible beneath epidermal surface. Dr. Wren, could it be hydatid disease? The anochus sometimes mimics fetal motion. Dr. Crisp, then where is the fever? The woman's pulse is steady, temperature unremarkable. Hydid would not thrive without constitutional distress. Dr. Morton, we may be confronting a parasitic case of unique formation or, as has been suggested, an instance of aggravated hysteria producing somatic delusion. Observer, the motion, sir, was witnessed by several villagers. Dr. Morton, villagers are given to imagination. There was a pause as the surgeon stood around the examination table. Agatha lay motionless, eyes half open, her face hollowed by the months of illness. The swelling beneath the linen sheet rose like a small hill, shifting slightly with each breath. Dr. Wren, if it be hysteria, the flesh should not move independently. If it be tumor, it must be excised. And if it be parasite, Dr. Crisp, interrupting, then we are hosting something that should not exist within the human cavity. The senior surgeon made the decision with characteristic brevity. We proceed. Exploratory incision at dawn. The room was prepared in standard fashion. Instruments laid on enamel trays. Scalpels sterilized by flame. Linen soaked in carbolic solution. A fire smoldered weakly in the corner grate. The gaslight above cast long warped shadows across the tiled floor. At commencement, Dr. Morton drew the first incision along the median line, shallow, steady. A thin bead of blood. Surfaced, ordinary, unremarkable. Then came an audible sound not listed in the surgical manuals, a faint, compressed hiss, as if air had been expelled from within. The surgeon froze, blade still in hand. Dr. Crisp, could it be gas release? Dr. Morton, perhaps, yet it is warm. Do you feel it? Indeed, a current of heat emanated from the wound, not feverish, but organic, pulsing faintly against the open air. Nurse Clay, holding the basin, staggered backward. The metallic scent of blood had changed, replaced by something earthy, damp, the smell of soil after rain. Observer Linton. Sir, the surface is shifting. Morton looked down. Beneath the exposed tissue, a movement occurred. Subtle, sliding, impossible to localize. He reached for the forceps, his breath measured. Then the nurse fainted. The basin struck the floor with a hollow clang, water spilling across the tiles. Dr. Morton did not move his gaze from the incision. His gloved fingers hovered an inch above it, trembling slightly. "Dr. Crisp." "Sir." No reply. The room fell silent, save for the soft rhythmic sound. Not breathing, not heartbeat, a slow internal motion, patient and deliberate. At 7:24 a.m., according to the log, Dr. Morton abruptly ceased movement and stood fixed, eyes wide, his hand suspended over the wound. His breathing had stopped. The entry ends there. The remainder of the page in the surgical ledger is blank. Only the ink blot remains dried in the margin where his pen fell. Following brief interruption. Due to assistant fainting, Dr. Crisp assumed position at the left of the operating table. Dr. Morton proceeded with a controlled extension of the midline incision approximately 6 in inferior to the sternum. Upon separation of the dermal layer and fascia, a cavity was exposed containing an unusual serous fluid of yellowish-gray tint and earthy odor. Temperature of the discharge measured higher than ambient by an estimated 8 degrees Fahrenheit. At 7:29 a.m., movement within the cavity was observed, slow, rotational, accompanied by a faint internal frictional sound. Initial assumption was intestinal paresthesia. However, further inspection revealed an independent structure coiled tightly upon itself and partially embedded in the peritoneal lining. Dr. Morton employed retractors to widen the field. Upon contact with metal instruments, the structure responded with a contractile motion inconsistent with human tissue. Dr. Wren noted visible scales along the surface darkened by bile and blood. At 7:31 a.m., identification confirmed. Adian organism, serpent, living, origin, undetermined. Dr. Morton maintained composure and instructed that the patient be kept under full ether. The incision was widened by a further 2 inches. Upon manual extraction, the serpent resisted briefly, coiling and uncoiling in rhythmic movement against the abdominal cavity. Its anterior portion was entwined about the mesenteric tissues. Posterior end lodged near the lower bowel. Minimal internal bleeding noted. At 7:38 a.m. the specimen was fully removed, alive but severely weakened. The body emitted low spasmodic contractions. Blood loss from the patient remained controlled. Observation during removal recorded by Dr. Wren. Organ displacement evident. Liver and stomach compressed upward. Intestinal tract shifted laterally. Foreign organism appears newer-ished. Midsection distended with undigested matter, possibly derived from host's intake. Partial self-digestion evident. Specimen placed in a sterile basin for study. Upon exposure to open air, it displayed erratic movement for approximately 90 seconds before slowing. The texture of its scales altered as fluid evaporated, turning from brown to ashen gray. Discussion arose regarding classification. Dr. Crisp proposed Coluber radiatus, Asian ratnake, though coloration inconsistent with local species. Dr. Morton speculated it entered the body through ingestion, possibly contaminated well water or imported earthenware vessel. No precedent for survival of such organism within human host was found in hospital records or British medical literature. At 7:44 a.m. the serpent expired. The tail in final motion struck the basin's edge and fell still resting in proximity to the patient's hand which lay open upon the sheet. No further reaction was noted. The odor in the room persisted. An earthy mixture of bile and soil. Instruments were cleaned with carbolic solution. The specimen was sealed in a glass jar with alcohol for preservation and later study. At 7:52 a.m., Dr. Morton dictated the concluding note to the attending clerk. Procedure successful. Host remains insensible. Circulation stable. Foreign organism extracted intact. Cause of implantation unconfirmed. Subject alive. Creature deceased. He then ordered the curtains open to let the winter light in. The room remained silent except for the faint crack of frost against the window glass, a sound noted in the margin of the record, though not explained. The patient survived a major abdominal operation. Wound closed by silk sutures. Minor separation along lower margin observed after the third day. Moderate fever. 101.6 persisted for 10 days accompanied by intermittent delirium. Appetite poor. Odor from incision described as earthy, not putrefactive. Pulse irregular. Respiration shallow. The first month was dominated by fever, sleep, and silence. Agatha's body appeared diminished, skin translucent, collarbones sharp beneath the linen. The nurses noted that she rarely spoke except in dreams when she muttered indistinctly of something turning. Her abdomen, though healed externally, remained tender. Every attempt at nourishment produced nausea. Alfred visited twice. On both occasions he remained standing by the door, hat in hand, speaking only to the physician. He did not approach her bed. The marriage, as one nurse later remarked, seemed already embalmed. By midsummer, infection had subsided. The wound healed fully. No residual swelling detected. Weight gain minimal. Patient described as skeletal pallid hair, thinning. A strict convalescent regimen was introduced. Broth, girl, weak tea, and slow exercise with assistance. The patient exhibits unwillingness to look at her abdomen, declines assistance with bathing, repeatedly requests to keep water from touching the stomach, displays marked anxiety at presence of reflective surfaces. Her sleep remained disturbed. The nurses heard gasping during the night and occasional faint tapping against the metal frame of the bed, involuntary motion, possibly nervous tremor. When questioned, Agatha reported that she often dreamt of pressure beneath her ribs, a sensation she described as movement without direction. Social curiosity surrounding her case grew. Medical students requested to observe. Several physicians visited from London. The case was cited at a symposium as an example of rare parasitic survival. Newspapers reported only the facts. A woman recovered after extraordinary internal condition. In Ballore, however, her name was recited in whispers. Mothers warned their children not to drink from uncovered vessels. Agatha's appetite returned in autumn. She began to eat small portions of bread, but only when alone. When asked, she said she feared being watched while swallowing. One nurse, curious, noted an anomaly. Whenever the patient drank water, her pulse increased sharply as though the act itself roused a physiological response. Upon ingestion of fluid, the patient exhibits elevated heart rate. 20 ppm increase within 30 seconds. Facial color improves transiently. Reports of faint stirring in the upper abdomen lasting several moments. No objective movement visible. Psychological rather than physical origin suspected. Agatha's own writings from this period, preserved in fragments of a small journal, reveal the dissonance between her recovery and her mind. The doctors say I am well. They do not see that I move when I am still. Sometimes I feel it shift when I drink water. It waits for that. It knows the sound. By year's end, she was declared fit for discharge. Her body had healed, but her eyes betrayed vigilance, the habit of one listening inwardly for proof of peace. She left the hospital in early February of 1881, escorted by her husband, who did not touch her arm as they walked. The final note in the hospital ledger written in Dr. Crisp's hand closes her file with measured restraint. Patient exhibits distrust toward her own body. Prognosis satisfactory. Psychological stability uncertain. The case was sealed, labeled, and archived among the records of anomalous recoveries. Her bed, stripped and remade for the next admission, bore a faint discoloration at the center, not blood, but a pale ring as tea, though something had once seeped upward from below, and then dried in perfect silence. The carriage that brought Agatha Alfred home arrived without ceremony. The driver refused to help her inside, muttering that the woman was best left to her own walls. Alfred met her at the threshold, offered his arm, then withdrew it when she did not take it. Their daughter, Mary, 11 years old, waited by the window, clutching a doll with one missing arm. She stared not at her mother's face, but at the long dark seam that ran vertically beneath her bodice, the mark of the operation that had given her back, and yet taken her mother. The house itself seemed changed. Dust had gathered on the corners of the mantel. The air carried a faint musty odor, as if the rooms had been unoccupied for years instead of months. Agatha stood in the doorway of her bedroom for a long time before crossing it. The bed appeared too large, the picture beside it too familiar. The earthen vessel remained in its place by the table, the rim stained faintly from years of use. She did not touch it. In the weeks that followed, she began a strict routine of purification. Every morning before breakfast, she boiled water and scrubbed the kitchen floors with lye. She burned old linens and replaced them with plain muslin cloth, washed twice before use. Alfred protested at the waste, but said little. Beyond that, when she cooked, she refused to eat unless she had first inspected each utensil for residue. Even the bread was broken open and examined, the crumbs scattered and wreathed, as if she feared something might still be living within them. Neighbors who visited with condolences left uneasy. They found her voice calm but detached, her movements deliberate and methodical. When they spoke of her illness, she responded with polite incomprehension, as though it had happened to someone else entirely. Soon the visit stopped. Alfred spent his days at the mill, returning home after dark. He, no longer, entered her room. Supper was taken in silence. Agatha at the end of the table, Alfred at the other, their daughter between them, watching the measured way her mother chewed, swallowed, and waited before speaking. If a drop of water fell from her cup, Agatha would flinch, blot it immediately, and stare at the damp mark until it vanished. By midsummer, her health appeared restored, but her manner remained cautious, restrained, as though she mistrusted the calm within her own body. She took daily walks along the edge of the forest, tracing the same path each morning. Villagers began to whisper again. They said she spoke to no one and carried a cloth over her mouth to avoid the dust. A grocer's wife claimed she once saw Agatha pause at the village well, stare into it for several minutes, and turn away without drawing water. Inside the house, Mary observed everything. She learned to imitate her mother's quiet habits, folding, cleaning, listening. One afternoon, she found Agatha in the bedroom, seated before the small table, where the pitcher still stood. The lamp was unlit. Light from the window fell across the vessel, showing the fine cracks along its surface. Mary asked softly, "Mama, what are you looking at?" Agatha did not turn. Her eyes were fixed on the water's surface, though the picture had not been filled since her return. The silence stretched long enough that the child began to step away. Then Agatha whispered, barely audible, "It's quiet now. It must be sleeping." Mary said nothing. She backed out of the room, leaving her mother motionless before the picture, the afternoon light fading across the wall. That night, Alfred found the door still open, the lamp cold, and the house silent, except for the faint trickle of water in the basin, though no one had drawn any that day. For more than 3 decades following her return from Winchester, Agatha Alfred lived in quiet seclusion within the same house where her illness had begun. The villagers of Ballure, who once speculated freely about her affliction, had long since turned their curiosity to other tragedies. Yet her name remained a private caution, spoken softly to children who played near the well, or to wives who fell ill without cause. The Alfreds lived inwardly. The curtains remained drawn year-round. Visitors were received only in the front hall, and only when necessary. Meals were taken in silence. The daughter Mary grew into a tall, thin woman who resembled her mother more each year. Same narrow frame, same habit of pausing before speaking as though weighing every word against memory. She never married, never sought work beyond the home. Alfred aged faster than either of them. His hair whitened early, his hands grew tremulous from years at the mill. He spent most of his evenings on the porch, pipe unlit, staring toward the road, but never calling to anyone who passed. The house, once bright with activity, fell into a kind of domestic hibernation. The clock above the hearth stopped and was never rewound. The garden withered. Moss crept up the base of the walls. Agatha maintained her routines to the end. She cleaned the house each morning, boiled her water, and ate the same meal daily. A single slice of bread soaked in milk, eaten slowly and without salt. She inspected every vessel before use, turning the pitcher in her hands, holding it to the light, then setting it back in its place untouched. Her movements were steady, unhurried, neither fearful nor calm, but deliberate, as though she was still obeying an unspoken order. The villagers, when they passed, saw little of her. Occasionally at dusk, a lamp would burn in the upstairs window, the same room where she had once been recovering. No shadow moved behind the curtain, but the light stayed until morning. By her 67th year, Agatha's health declined quietly. She spoke little, slept often, and seemed at peace, though her breathing carried a faint rasp, a sound that unsettled her daughter, who said it resembled something turning in gravel. On the night of 3rd of March, 1912, Mary found her mother seated beside the bed, head bowed, hands resting on the table near the old earthen pitcher. The lamp had burned low. Her body was still warm when found, but her pulse had ceased. The villagers who attended her wake described an odor that rose gradually in the house, not decay, but something older, wetter, like soil turned after rain. It clung to the floorboards and to the air long after the burial. The physician attributed it to dampness from the ground, though the season had been dry for weeks. The following morning, Alfred closed the house. He and Mary left before dawn, their belongings packed into a single cart. They were never seen in Ballure again. Within a year, ivy had overtaken the walls, windows cracked from neglect. The house leaned slightly forward as if the earth beneath were drawing it down. Decades later, the case resurfaced only once in a medical compendium on abnormal internal infestations. A marginal note referenced the file from Winchester. Case 49B. Subject: Agatha Alfred. Post-re ovary. Long-term psychological consequences resolved. Unknown. The Alfred home still stood by then, boarded, silent, and sunken into the damp soil that had first given it life. And on certain nights, villagers claimed the air around it smelled faintly of water and earth. In the end, Agatha Alfred lived, but not untouched. Her story was buried in ledgers and whispers, forgotten by medicine, remembered by fear. The old Alfred house still stands, quiet, sunken, waiting. Subscribe, like, and ring the bell. Because in the shadow book, the past never dies. It only waits.